Hello, welcome to the Courageous Self-Care podcast. I'm your host, Christina Marlette. On this show, we talk about self-care that takes courage. And that is self-care that goes beyond, I like to say, bubble baths, chocolate, and wine. And those are all great strategies. And at the same time, if that's all you're using, or you don't even do any kind of self-care, or you do a little bit of self-care and you tend to focus on your physical health, then there is room for more. And it's not that it's going to take a lot more time, but it's going to have dramatic effects in how much energy you have and your relationships and your quality of life overall. You're just going to feel fantastic when you start implementing the courageous self-care skill sets. Often, or I think always, we don't know what we don't know. And so that's what I love to do on this podcast, is share with you ideas and strategies and tips on self-care that you might not have considered that it would be self-care to practice that. So I'm here as your guide. I love doing this and connecting with you on a regular basis. And I also love to invite other guides who align with the idea of courage and or self-care. So today I have another guest with me, Miranda da Haan. Miranda, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
I'm so glad to have you here. So Miranda, tell us a little bit about who you are, how you love to spend your time, what you love to do.
I guess one of the things that I'm very much into is personal development. I can consider myself a personal development junkie.
I can totally identify with that. I've spent at least a decade traveling all over North America and doing courses. And what would you say personal development has done for you in a nutshell?
It's really helped me improve my awareness. It's taken my blinders off so that I'm not just following the crowd and doing what everybody else says I should be doing, when I should be doing it, and stuff like that. And it's been a slow process, but yeah, it's just the awareness factor is just a very huge thing.
Absolutely. And I think that's so true it's so valuable to learn where we are following the crowd, and it might not even have occurred to us until we get that awareness like you're talking about. And then when we start to make decisions based on our own pursuit, our own desires, our own happiness, and we decrease I'm thinking like a thermometer, we decrease the temperature on trying to do things to please other people, it makes a tremendous difference on how we show up in our lives.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. What's the difference you've noticed in yourself since you've started doing personal development?
Well, I think I've definitely had an increase in self-confidence. I've been more willing to be able to push through my fears because I have the awareness that I'm going to be a stronger, more confident person when I come out on the other side. Even if it doesn't turn out exactly the way I'm maybe hoping for, it still is a learning experience and a beneficial experience.
Absolutely. And you're so right. Sometimes we have this vision of how it's going to turn out in a perfect world, and then what happens does not match. But from my experience, I've learned that over time it turns out even better, and I couldn't have crafted such a wonderful outcome, even though sometimes it's painful and uncomfortable, and yeah, there's absolutely fear involved. So Miranda, I love to get guests on the show to share a current favorite self-care practice. And before you do that, one of the reasons I think it's important to get the conversation going about self-care, like I do on the podcast, is that either people have zero self-care strategies and they're just busy doing stuff for other people, taking care of everyone but themselves, or sometimes our listeners have started to do some self-care. There's a pedicure here and there. There might be some shifts in nutrition. There might be increased movement and like physical movement in your body. And there are just so many options for self-care. And I love to hear different people's ideas on what self-care is, because it's a really personal thing. And I think the more ideas we encounter and share, the more we're able to implement what we might not have thought of as self-care. So what's something you love to do for yourself that really fills you up right now?
Well, originally I was thinking that, along the lines of a physical practice like yoga and that type of thing, which I do really enjoy. But right now, I think what's really making a difference for me is learning to really listen to myself, listening to my intuition, getting in touch, like listening to the universe, or for some people that might be God or whatever they believe in. Mm-hmm. And I made a New Year's resolution, and I've never really been much for New Year's resolutions, but I made a New Year's resolution this year that I wanted to learn to trust myself and learn to trust the universe. And I've been slowly working towards that. And I'm starting to notice that things are starting to improve in my life, because I am starting to become aware of when my intuition is telling me something. But it's always been a little bit of a challenge for me, because it's been, is it my intuition, or is it just simply something I want to do?
Yeah.
Or is what I want to do my intuition telling me to do it anyways? So it's, I'm starting to realize that if I'm really feeling a strong desire to do something, then that's an indication that that's the path.
Mm. That's so important. And first of all, I love that you're talking about a New Year's resolution in June, 6 months after, because most people have forgotten their resolutions by mid-January, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that trusting yourself and trusting your intuition is an amazing resolution. And that is certainly a form of self-care. In fact, that is one of the courageous self-care skill sets. There are 12 of them. And learning to access and trust and follow, take action on your intuition is a whole skill set. And you're right, it does take tremendous courage to dive into that, to figure out how our intuition communicates with us, because there are a bunch of different ways. It's an individual thing for different people. And then acting on it and noticing where that strong desire is and following through, even if you think, oh, it might not be my intuition, maybe it's my ego, I don't know, but I'm going to follow it anyways and see what happens. That is super powerful. I love that you're talking about that. And I'm curious, how have you found that your intuition does communicate with you? Like sometimes people hear voices, sometimes people journal and get answers, sometimes there are symbols and signs, or sometimes you just have a feeling. So is it any of those for you, or what have you discovered?
For me right now, it seems to be mostly a feeling. It's like I'll kind of feel it in my, well, I guess I feel it in my gut, which is where I guess it comes along the phrase gut feeling.
Yes.
I haven't really noticed it in other ways. It might have shown up, but I just haven't recognized it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one thing I love to do when I'm sharing with people how to further deepen their relationship with their intuition is to make it fun. It can actually be really entertaining and enjoyable, especially if you ask for a sign. Some people like to have a special word, and then if they turn on the radio and they hear their special word, they know it's a yes to go for it. Sometimes if you ask for a sign and you make it really specific and it shows up in the next 72 hours, then you know it's a yes. And yeah, what I've learned is that you need to be really specific with your intuition when you're asking for signs. And then other times something really weird will show up, something super unusual, and then you can look up the meaning of that. Like once last year, I was out for a walk in the city of Calgary, which is 1 million people. And I was out in the neighborhood, which is urban, and I saw a coyote in a place where you would never expect to see a coyote. And so I'm like, ooh, this is so interesting. This must mean something. So I ran home and typed into the computer, what does it mean when you see a coyote, and got the answer. And so I think the more we open up to that kind of thing, the universe gets really playful with us, and it can be super fun. And then that sometimes takes some of that fear out of acting on your intuition, because it's just like a game, and what's going to happen if I do this? Yeah, so I wanted to share that for you listening, in case you haven't, in case you haven't really started to hone your intuition. And if you have, then there are all sorts of ways that we can connect with it. So Miranda, I'm curious, what is something that you might be able to share with us that has happened this year and you've thought, yeah, I think this is my intuition, and you've acted on it? What's something that has come up for you?
This just recently happened, and I haven't really told anybody about it yet. But
oh, you're letting us in on your secrets.
I came across an opportunity to be a co-author in a book.
Oh, awesome.
And it's a volume 2 of international bestseller. And I don't know, I didn't even really think about it. I just saw the opportunity. I responded. I made set an appointment for a phone call to talk with the lady who does it, and made the decision. It just felt like this was what I was meant to do. Like I was just, and I've just been feeling really, really excited about it since then.
That's a good sign.
Yeah, and it's been a long time since I've really actually felt any excitement. So I'm like, okay, I think this must mean I'm on the right path, because it's like I haven't felt like this in a long, long time.
I love that. Absolutely. When there's excitement and a feeling of anticipation towards something, that has to be your intuition, because we're designed to look forward to things and have wonderful things happen to us and be in the flow of abundance and energy and vitality. And so I would definitely say that's a big yes, that you're on the right track and following your intuition. So well done.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'll share an experience I had in the last couple of weeks too. I had, it came into my path that there was this opportunity to do some coaching with someone that I have followed for several years. And it was a very different price point than what I thought it would be, and in a good way. And I felt, this energetic tension, and I haven't wanted to really study with anyone for the last couple of years. So there was this tension, and I ran it past my husband to see what he thought. And I decided, no, I'm not going to do it. That just doesn't seem like the best idea right now. And once I made that decision, the tension got even more. And I played with it for a few days, let it sit. And I just thought, there is no way that I can not do this, even though there's a lot of fear around it and a lot of unknown and what's going to happen. But it felt like there's just this, I have the kinesthetic intuition too. Like I just get that feeling. And I thought, I haven't been this excited about learning from anyone for a couple of years. So this has to be a yes. So I jumped on the opportunity, and exactly like you, I feel so excited. And I've been getting confirmation in different ways, like signs from the universe that it is the right decision. So we're on a similar path right now. And I think energetically that's happening for a lot of people. So very cool that we're both in the same energetic soup right now. All right, so we are going to pause for a quick commercial break. When we come back, Miranda is going to share a story of courage, so be sure to stick around. We will be right back. Okay, welcome back. We're getting into the second half of the interview, where I love to get guests to share one of their many stories of courage. And I think that is true for all people. We all have all sorts of courage. Sometimes it's been buried for a while and we need to get that muscle of courage exercising again. But I love getting these stories of courage out into the open because they show listeners, they show the guests on the show, they show everyone that courage is something that it takes practice. And sometimes when we hear a story of courage, we think, oh my gosh, I did that. I didn't actually think that that was all that courageous, but I've done that. So maybe I am a courageous person. And other times we're going through something similar and we feel like, oh, I just can't get over that hump. That wave of fear is too big. But then we get courage by listening to someone else's story of courage. We get into that energy. Courage is definitely an energy. And the more we interact with it, the closer and closer it comes until it goes right into our heart. And then we have no choice but to act courageously. So Miranda, what story would you like to share with us today?
I feel like my current journey is my courage that I'm dealing with right now. A lot of that is deciding to start a business. Last year I decided to start a business. And there was a lot of fear with that because I had tried a business before and it didn't work. And I went back to the corporate to pay the bills and that. And I kind of got stuck in that and it just totally drained my energy. And when I got laid off from the job, I was looking for a new job, but I couldn't see anything I wanted to apply for. It just wasn't, I didn't want to take a job just for the sake of taking a job. It just did not entice me. And so I found it very hard to apply for anything. And then I was connected with a lady who had suggested to me, well, she took a look at my resume, or no, she didn't look at my resume. She asked me what was my experience because she's got an HR background. And she said, well, you've got such a diverse background. It's like, have you considered being an entrepreneur? And I had this idea in my mind percolating for quite a while. And there's a program through the government that teaches people how to be entrepreneurs. And so I decided to take that program, which was, I guess, maybe that was also part of connecting with my intuition, but I didn't have as strong a feeling then. But it just felt like a better decision for me than to apply for a job that I didn't really want. So, and I had a lot of fear with that and a lot of doubt and asked myself, am I making the right choice? And then throughout the program, I got a mixture of some validation of what I was doing and some questioning and that. And I had the reason in my mind of why I wanted to do the business. But in the classroom, when I was telling them why I wanted to do the business, they told me, well, because my business has to do with animals. So your reason can't be about the animals. It's got to be about the clients. So I was basically told, that my story wasn't right and I needed to change it. And that's kind of the experience that I have had for a lot of the time that I have been working on this business, is that there's a lot of people who have told me what I should do, what I shouldn't do, when I should do it, how I should do it, where I should do it. And all this, and it's all like this conflicting information, and it was causing me a huge amount of anxiety because, you often hear the phrase fight or flight. But the one part that's missing from that is freeze.
Yes.
And that was what was happening to me. It was like I was getting so confused and frustrated and bombarded that I ended up freezing and not doing anything. And this is really only a couple of months ago, but I finally came to the realization that everybody's different. We're not cookie cutter humans. And just because something worked for one person, or this idea worked for somebody else, or this didn't work for somebody else, that doesn't mean that that's going to apply to me as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not just in business. That's with the food we eat. That's with the personal development we choose, the healing methods we choose, all this different things. Is that it's not the same for everybody. And that's where I feel we really have to connect with ourselves and find out what is right for us individually. And that's kind of where I'm at right now, is that I'm starting to kind of push aside what other people are saying. I'll still I'll listen to them, but then it'd be like, okay, well, does that resonate with me? And if it doesn't resonate with me, then I'm like, okay, that's not the right thing for me right now. And I'll look for other work. Because, there are a lot of people who have knowledge out there, and it's, I can get valuable advice, but I just need to figure out which advice is the best for me.
Mm-hmm. That is an amazing story. I love it. And I love that you chose to share something you're going through right now, so that it's really poignant and alive for you. And you're so right. And in business right now, I feel like there's a huge shift happening on a global or even universal level, that what did work in the past is shifting. And there are people who are doing things in different ways. I certainly see that in the group of entrepreneurs that I connect with on a regular basis. We're all noticing that the old ways are kind of falling away, and there are people who are clinging on to them. And then there are people who are shifting and finding new ways of doing things. And so that skill of being able to trust yourself, and I think it's no coincidence that your theme for the year and your resolution is to trust. You've been given this big way to get to play with trust and to figure out how to trust yourself and your intuition going through this courageous adventure. And so it's so important to see what other people have to say and then decide for yourself, does this resonate? And a great way to do that is to access your body. Like if you're feeling that excitement, if you're feeling tingling and expansion, then it's a big yes. And if there's tightness or clenching or heavy sensations, it's a no. And even if people encourage you to do something their way, like you said, it doesn't mean that you do have to do it their way. You need to do what feels best to you. So I love that you're going through that. I love that you authentically and vulnerably shared that. It's so important for people to hear that message, because the best person to trust is yourself.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And it's not an easy thing to do.
No.
Because you're so used to listening to other people, and it's like, well, they've been in business longer than I have, so they must know more than I do. And but we have our own innate ability to be able to figure out what is right, even if we don't have the actual experience.
I totally agree. So what is your business that you're doing with animals, Miranda?
Well, it's a pet education business. So what I do is I help pet guardians navigate and understand different aspects of pet health and wellness. And I empower them to be able to ask informed questions and make informed decisions so that they can have their pets be their happiest, healthiest versions of themselves.
Oh, I love that. And so did you decide on why you're doing that?
Yeah, it was a reason that was actually kind of buried, because I haven't been in touch with my feelings for most of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And so this was a situation that happened that as soon as the feeling kind of came up, I tamped it down and didn't allow myself to feel it. And it's only been recently that I've been reconnected with it. And because I have a background as an animal health technologist.
Okay.
And so as part of my training, I needed to work in the euthanasia section of the Humane Society. And so that meant I had to euthanize, kill the dogs, the cats, and other surrendered animals that ended up there. And they weren't necessarily sick because unfortunately the society only has so much room. And if an animal doesn't get adopted for a certain period of time, then they could end up there. And for me, I had this little hedgehog that I was holding, and it just kind of looked up at me, and it obviously realized that it was in danger because it just curled itself up into a little ball trying to protect itself. And it just broke my heart that I was going to have to end its life. And so it's become my mission now that I want to try to reduce the number of animals that end up in the humane societies or end up as strays or in some other kind of situation by doing the education and trying to help people to really understand what's involved with pet care.
Oh my gosh, I'm covered in goosebumps. That's an amazing story.
Yeah, and I'm glad that I really connected with it again, because that was what I had gone away from because of what other people had been telling me. So
I think that's a great why. And so do you work with people when they're already pet owners or people who are deciding if they want to be pet owners? How does that work for you?
Well, both. If people are thinking that they would like to get a pet, then I would like to help them to learn what's involved with that.
Yeah.
Because it's not just simply, you get a pet and you get some supplies and food and there you go. There's a lot that's involved with it. And I think a lot of people aren't really aware of what all that is involved. And I've created some presentations to help with that. And I also will educate people on, the general care once you have the pet, like safety or, how to keep your pet safe. And if you're traveling with your pet, what do you need to know, and emergency care, and like a whole lot of different types of topics.
That is so interesting. I think that is a great niche to have. And based on your past experience, you seeing that is needed for more animals to be able to survive and be in families and be loved and live their full lives. I think that's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, that brings us to a great segue. If people want to get in touch with you, Miranda, and chat about your personal development experience or your story of courage or anything to do with pets and animals and being responsible caregivers for them, how can they find you online?
Well, they can go through my Facebook page, which is Petwell Navigation, PETWELL Navigation, all one, and then YAG at the end.
Okay.
And then, my email is also on there as well. So if they wanted to send me an email, they could do that as well.
Excellent. Yeah, so I'll put the link for that in the show notes. So it's an easy one click. You don't have to type anything out. You can just go into the show notes and connect with Miranda that way. Miranda, thank you so much for sharing your story and your vulnerability and your story of courage. I never had anyone on the show talk about that aspect of animals and pet ownership, and I think that's super interesting. So I'm really glad that you got courageous and decided to be a guest on the show.
Thanks. It was a lot of fun. I'm glad I had the opportunity.
Wonderful. I'm so grateful. And for you listeners, thank you very much for listening. I do encourage you, if you are considering to become a pet owner, or if you are struggling with navigating any issues with your pets, do reach out to Miranda. I know she's going to take amazing care of you, and you can just click on that link in the show notes. And I also want to give you a giant, big virtual gold star for listening. You can count this as your courageous self-care for the day. It's always powerful to connect with people who are sharing their stories of courage, sharing ideas on how to care for themselves. And I encourage you to do the same. Maybe it's what your takeaway is, that you're going to play with trust and developing your intuition. Maybe you're going to notice that you're going through a similar situation where something hasn't been feeling right, and you're going to take the leap and go into something that makes you more excited and feel more alive. So those are some options and ideas that came up today. Or you might courageously leap into becoming a pet owner and having someone else to care for in your life who will love you unconditionally. This show airs usually once or twice a week. Usually there is one interview with someone who aligns with self-care. And then there's also a teaching episode where I get into the different skill sets that go along with courageous self-care and give you some strategic action steps. So I invite you to come back. And also, if you enjoyed this episode, give it a like or leave a comment or share it with a friend or leave a review. That all helps the podcast reach all the ears and hearts that need to connect with it. And my vision is for a world full of people, especially women and any men who feel on board with this idea, that when you prioritize your own well-being, you are not just doing it for yourself. Yes, you benefit and your life gets absolutely better than you could even imagine, but it also, there's nothing selfish about it because it's rippling out into all your relationships, your energy shifts, and it goes out into the entire universe. So I encourage you to come back and listen for more ideas on how to implement strategic self-care that moves the needle, makes you feel excited to get out of bed in the morning, and so satisfied with yourself when you hop back into bed at night. Thank you for listening. Miranda, thanks again for being here and sharing your energy and stories with us.
Thank you so much.
You are so welcome. And thank you for listening from wherever you are in the world. I appreciate you and value you and encourage you to practice courageous self-care. Thank you for listening. I look forward to connecting with you again next time. Bye-bye for now.